people that bought from us with this new project was a magazine about interviews. It was a magazine about trying to figure out what was the success formula of everybody, every leader. No, it doesn't matter if they're politicians or entrepreneurs or business owners or actors or writers or physicians or whatever. We wanted to interview leaders to ask them what was their recipe for success. And we started doing that. And
so that sounds like the pivot point where everything changed, right? So
literally,
yeah, so let's take a little break because that reminds me kind of like Napoleon Hill. I don't know if you've read his book, but that's what he did for like 20 years. So let's take a quick break. We'll be back in 30 seconds.
Okay, good.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, but it's a long story. I'm trying to. You tell me if you want more details or.
Because when I met you, you were already very successful. So it's fascinating to hear that you've had to go through some of the same struggles as the entrepreneurs that you now serve. It's fascinating.
I've been struggling all my life, and I don't think I will ever stop struggling.
But you also know how to enjoy life, which is important.
Well, yeah, at some point you need to just relax a little bit and enjoy, because you never feel that you have gotten anywhere.
All right. Welcome back. I think I was gone, but you guys kept going. Like it's so interesting that you can't stop, man.
I was sharing, I've only known the part of the story from when Latino Leaders and Jorge were already very, very successful and well regarded. So it's fascinating for me to hear the backstory and the history and how he had to face all these unexpected challenges like many of the entrepreneurs that he's now serving and working with. So,
well, that's the story, right? Whenever they said it's a overnight success, but they don't see the 20 years before the overnight success. It's an overnight success, 20 years in the making. And I love what you were saying, Jorge, that way of interviewing people, because one of my favorite books is Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And that's what he did for 20 years, basically.
Yeah. And you know, I one of the things that I'm going to probably go out of this life with is my experience and my memories about almost 7,500 interviews that I have made personally, and I still making every week, every month for magazines and asking people about their success. And let me tell you what you were saying, Andrew, the overnight success. I don't think there's such a thing like that. I mean, everything has a lot of background, and I also have learned something. It's like a physical. It's not it's a Newtonian law, which is as fast as you go up, the same speed you go down. Right? Success is like that.
Or faster.
If someone or something had success very suddenly and fast, you can bet their downfall will be very fast and also sudden. But you know, at that time we were just focusing on trying to come with an idea of this magazine, interviewing leaders. In doing that, we were able to convince some people to buy ads in advance, and we did that. We interviewed some connections. Some people helped us to get into people like, for example, I remember someone with my contacts. We got an interview with Raúl Velasco, who was a TV icon at that time. We got an interview with the first PAN political party in Mexico, the first PAN governor of the state of Baja California Norte, which was Ernesto Rufo. We got an interview with a very famous politician in Mexico called Carlos Jan Gonzalez. And little by little, we were doing interviews, and one, took us to the other, and one door opened another two doors, and we were, little by little trying to do this until we got in trouble because one gringo, like
here goes a gringo,
not as nice as you, but very, very, very smart, was doing some work for the government of Mexico at that time. The NAFTA, the first NAFTA, was going to be signed, and everybody was working to convince the Congress to pass a fast track so the NAFTA could be approved and signed on time by President Salinas, Bush, and Chrétien from Canada. And Mexico hired a lot of lobbyists in Washington and New York to convince, and one of these lobbyists happened to have a similar magazine of Líderes Mexicanos. We already had like 2 years or something like that there. I mean, our magazine was very little known. We were starting just to put it out. We weren't even sold in stores yet. I mean, we were just distributing subscribers, things like that. And this gringo, found our magazine, that we were competing with the same clients to get the advertising, and he decided to elevate the whole thing all the way to the president of Mexico. And when one of these meetings, with the president, because of the lobby thing that they were doing, he was the Secretary of Commerce and the Secretary of Economy and everybody in the cabinet there with the President Salinas of Mexico. And he at the end of the meeting, by the way, I need to say something. This magazine is doing some dirty job, and they're stealing my concept, and they are going to see my clients, blah, blah, blah. So, of course, when the president receives a claim like that, you immediately become an issue, or you become a topic in his desk. So next thing we know, we had all the political apparatus over us. I mean, we had audits from Hacienda, from the INS, from every single authority that could audit you to see who you are and all that. Many people talking to us, and Secretaría de Gobernación and Hacienda, and everybody just talking, who are you? What is this company? What is this magazine? Where's your registration? The Secretaría de Educación Pública told us to say, where's your trademark? Everything. But at the end of the day, we learned something. We had everything in order. So all our trademarks, all our copyrights, or everything was registered as it should be. So they went back to the president and say, well, there's a legal company and they're doing business and they're not doing anything wrong. So they called us, and instead of arguing with us, they told us, this man is very powerful. He's after you. If we were you, be careful. Keep doing what you're doing. But we recommend you and him having some kind of negotiation, because he's after you and he's going to sue you, and he's really mad.
Right.
So at that time, we were, trying to negotiate and say, well, and we asked these people that were talking to us, and how can we get some support from our government if we are doing these? What kind of support? Well, why don't you let us interview the president, and we will do an interview with the president in our magazine. So after some weeks, they said no to the interview, but the president was inviting us to have a cup of coffee with him. And this was a fantastic opportunity for me and my brother, who were at that time like 24-year-old. And we have never had the opportunity to go and meet to any president or anyone. And we were there, and he was, a very nice conversation. And he told us the same, look after you. You have a nice business. I think you can do many things with this magazine. It looks nice. It looks well done. But this man's very powerful. He's going to go after you. International courts, international right, trademarks and things like that are so be careful. So we did that. We talked to this man. We started to develop some of the projects and all that. But he dropped the thing later, and we got our interview with the president. But then what we did is that instead of an interview, we counter proposed to the president to make an entire special edition on his administration, interviewing not only him, but his cabinet, his ministers,
else.
his family, his friends. And that edition that we launched in September of 1994 was what put Líderes Mexicanos on the map. And from that month in September 1994, the magazine became very famous because everybody was talking about the magazine. The edition was beautiful. We make a reception in Los Pinos, and we presented the magazine, and everybody started to know the magazine. The magazine flew on the Air Force One, so it was the magazine on board of that plane. Everybody who took a tour with the president of Mexico had that. This edition was sent to the UN, to all the embassies in Mexico and all that. But guess what? Again, the fortune is very short. Only 3 months later, the man who was the hero became the worst ever leader in Mexico. By December 1995, he was completely banned. So we only had like 3 or 4 months in enjoying this famous or this fame reputation. Mm-hmm. Fortunately enough, the magazine didn't take any official or government advertising, because we knew that taking money from the government was not very smart if we wanted to stay independent.
Right.
So we didn't take any, and that saved us. That saved our reputation, but it was tough. And let me tell you that December of 1995 was very difficult, but the country in general, Mexico, was suffering a lot. It's one of the worst crises that we have ever seen. But our magazine stayed there, and then later on we started, kind of doing and coming back. Now, one of the lessons that we learned is in one of our conversations with Salinas de Gortari, when we were doing his interviews for the edition. He asked us, "What are you planning to do with your magazine? I mean, it's a nice magazine, it's a nice publication. What are you planning to do? What's the future?" And me and my brother, I mean, we haven't thought about anything in the future. We were just trying to survive, and we were just trying to put this magazine together and make it famous. And he told us, "You should think in exporting. You should think in making business with the world. Mexico is now part of the NAFTA. We are now in the biggest economy or economy region in the world." And we said, well, but we don't even speak English very well. So how are we going to go to the United States and make a business there? It's kind of no, I mean, we didn't think it seriously.
Right.
But then we started rethinking, and it was one of those days that we started going to the U.S. Very often, because we wanted to do interviews with Mexicans abroad. So we were doing trips, quick trips, 1 or 2 days only, to Los Angeles, Miami, New York, Chicago, Denver, Phoenix, Tampa, you name it. I mean, we were visiting every single big city with Latinos and Mexicans there, and we were doing interviews. And we did that for 2 years. And after doing that for 2 years, me and my brother, one I remember very well, we were in a Starbucks coffee that is in 5th Avenue and 57th Street in New York. And we were thinking, why don't we launch a new magazine here? There's no publication like this. There's no publication aimed to the Latino leadership level. All of the publications at that time were mostly in Spanish and directed to the low-income immigration, kind of Latino population and Hispanic population. But there were really not many publications or going into the leaders. And given the fact that Líderes was already 15 years old, it was now kind of successful, and we have learned some lessons there. And we said, well, why not? So it was.
That sounds like the perfect place to have another break.
Okay. Let's do it.
We have to take a break. This is Success Paradigms. We'll be back in 30 seconds. This